Okay, we're back, and if you remember last time we had programmed two different drum beats. One was the classic kick snare beat with the bass hitting on beats 1 and 3 and the snare hitting on beats 2 and 4, and then we did a variation of that. I have some more variations to show you this time. But just to review, I have my file open from last time, the reason file, and I've got the two beats programmed in. Here is what they sounded like. Here's the classic one. Okay, so that's just the bass drum on 1 and 3, snare drum on 2 and 4. Then we moved on and we saw this variation. So I've got that in the second pattern. And so what that is it's pretty much just like the classic pattern, except you have two hits on the bass when you hear it. So let's take a look at a few more of these. And what you might want to do is when you see them appear here, just pause the video and see if you can program on your own, program them on your own, and then you can see me do it as well. So in this one, you can see once again this is almost just like the classic beat, except that you have two beats for the bass drum the second time it hits. So instead of having two beats every time it hits, we just do that on the third beat. So let's see if we can get that programmed here. So I'll go to pattern 3, make sure the bass drum is selected. I want to hit the bass drum on the first beat, and then I want to move to the third beat, which begins at 9, and I want to hit the bass drum twice, so that would be at the first section of that beat and the second section. Right? So 9 and you're breaking up the third beat into two pieces, 9 and 10, 11 and 12. So you hit on 9 and hit on 11, and you've got it. The snare drum is just as usual. We hit on the third beat, and we hit on the last beat. Here it is. Okay, let's move on to number 4. Now number 4, it looks a little strange, but after we look at it, you'll see that once again, it's just like the classic beat. So we have the bass drum on the first beat, and then on the third beat, what we have here, this piece of notation here means rest. It means nothing is played, and it's an eighth note rest. So nothing is played for an eighth note. And then this is the bass drum. We haven't seen it. We haven't seen anything that looks like this, but that's also an eighth note. It's just that it's not beamed to any other note. It's not attached to any other note. So this is like having two bass note hits, but then taking the first one out. So it's just like the one we had before, just eliminating the first hit of the bass drum. So it's really not that far away from the traditional beat. So let's get that programmed. So number 4, bass drum. We want to hit on the first beat. Then we want to move to the third beat, which begins at 9. And once again, think of that third beat as divided into two pieces. We don't want to hit anything on the first piece, and then we want to hit on the second piece. There we go. And then for the snare drum, we want to hit on the, as usual, on the second and the fourth. Here it is. Okay, on to number 5. Number 5, again, it looks a lot more complicated, but it's really just a slight variation of the classic beat. Let's zero in on the third beat here. So we have nothing on the first part of that, and then the bass drum on the second part of that. But then right before that, right, we have the bass drum hitting Well, yeah, you'll see, but essentially what this is it's as if we started out putting the bass drum where we would naturally expect it to be, and then take that out of there, and on either side of it put a hit on the bass drum. So let's go through this. We've got a hit on the first beat with the bass drum. Then the second beat is 2 hits, snare drum, and then the bass drum. The third beat is nothing, and then the bass drum. And then the fourth beat, the snare drum. Okay, so it's really just as if we took that normal hit on the bass drum on the third beat, took it out of there, and just on either side of that empty space put a hit on the bass drum. Let's see how we would program that. Number 5, bass drum on the first hit, and then the second beat, which begins here at 5, we would have a snare drum on the first part of that and the bass drum on the second part of that. The third beat, we're going to have bass drum on the second part of that, so the third beat begins at 9. So we're going to have a hit on 11. And so if you look at that, ordinarily the bass drum would be struck at number 9 here, but we take that out and we move back to 7 and ahead to 11, and that's the modification. Oh, I'm on the snare drum. I can't believe it. All right, let's redo that. This gives me a chance to show you something here. What I can do to erase these is just click them again. So this was wrong because I was on the snare drum. Let's do that real quick for the bass drum again. A hit here, a hit at 7, and a hit at 11. There we go. So the snare drum, we've got a hit at the beginning of the second beat, and once again on the fourth. So here is what that should sound like. Very good. Sorry about that mix-up. All right, so the last two, we're going to get the snare drum involved a little bit. So let me make sure I'm on the bass drum. All right, so we've got the bass drum on the first beat. And, okay, so here, where is the third beat? The third beat is, once again, nothing, and then the bass drum. So the third beat begins at 9. Got nothing to start, then a hit on the bass drum. For the snare, we've got a hit on the second beat, and then just 2 hits on the fourth beat, so that would be at 13 and 15. Here it is. Okay, one more to go. Move on to pattern 7. Make sure I'm on the bass drum. Here we've just got lots of bass drum hits. So for the first beat, we've got two bass drum hits. Bass drum, and then for the second beat, a bass drum on the second part of that. So that's here. And then we've got 2 hits of the bass drum on the fourth beat, or the third beat, which would be right here and right here. And then bass drum on the last part of the last beat. So that would be here. I hope that's right. Then the snare drum at the beginning of the second beat and at the beginning of the fourth. Let's see. So I hope you can see that these patterns are really built off of that classic beat with the bass drum hitting the first and the third and the snare drum hitting on the second and the fourth. And if you can try any kind of modification you like, but staying close, somewhat close to that, should probably give you a pretty good foundation for the rest of the beat. And I'll show you how to start off building those in the next video.